Here's the truth nobody tells you about barrier repair. You don't need to choose between ceramides and niacinamide. You need to understand what each one actually does. Because one rebuilds your skin's structure, like replacing bricks in a wall, while the other trains your skin to make its own repairs. My name is Dr. Elena Voss, and what I'm about to share completely reframes how you should think about fixing damaged skin.
You're listening to Luxury Beauty on a Budget podcast. Quick thing I want to mention up front. Everything you're about to hear is based on research and content written and verified by real human experts. But the voice you're hearing right now is AI generated. We're transparent about that because it matters. If you've been listening for a while, thank you so much for being here. You're the reason this show exists. And if this is your first episode, I'm really glad you found us. We drop new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so you've got plenty to catch up on if you want to dive deeper. Now, let's jump right into today's topic.
Both ceramides and niacinamide win this comparison, but they work through completely different mechanisms. Ceramides rebuild lipid structure, while niacinamide regulates barrier production. This isn't about superiority. It's about matching molecular function to your specific barrier damage pattern. We're going to break down formulation chemistry, clinical response timelines, and which ingredient concentrations actually deliver measurable barrier repair without inflating your budget. Let me give you the quick comparison first. When we look at primary mechanism, ceramide complex provides direct lipid replacement in the stratum corneum, while niacinamide stimulates your skin's own ceramide synthesis. For optimal concentration, you want 2 to 5% ceramides with a minimum of 1% total ceramides, and 3 to 10% niacinamide with a sweet spot at 5%. Barrier repair speed differs significantly. Ceramides reduce transepidermal water loss within 48 to 72 hours, while niacinamide takes 7 to 14 days for measurable lipid increase. Ceramides work best for acute barrier damage and eczema-prone skin, while niacinamide excels with inflammatory barrier dysfunction and seborrheic skin. Price-wise, effective ceramide-dominant formulas run around $8 to $15 per ounce, while 5% or higher niacinamide serums cost around $4 to $9 per ounce. In terms of formulation stability, ceramides require emulsifier optimization, while niacinamide stays highly stable across pH 5 to 7. And they pair well with different complementary actives. Ceramides work with cholesterol and fatty acids in physiological ratios, while niacinamide combines nicely with zinc PCA, panthenol, and allantoin. Now, let's talk about the molecular reality of how each ingredient actually functions. Starting with ceramides, these are sphingolipids that constitute approximately 50% of the intercellular lipid matrix in your stratum corneum. When formulation chemists discuss ceramide complexes, they're referencing specific ratios, ideally ceramide to cholesterol to free fatty acids in a 3:1 to 1 or 1:1 to 1 ratio, mimicking the native barrier composition. The molecular reality matters here. Ceramide NP, that's non-hydroxy-phytostingosine, is the most abundant endogenous ceramide and the one you'll find in cost-effective formulations. Premium products may include ceramide AP, which is alpha-hydroxy-phytosphingosine, and ceramide EOP, esterified omega-hydroxy fatty acid phytosphingosine. These together represent about 10% of total skin ceramides, but command 300% price markups. Here's what the research demonstrates. A 2024 British Journal of Dermatology study showed that 2% total ceramide concentration reduced transepidermal water loss, or TEWL, by 23% within 72 hours, compared to 31% reduction with a multiceramide blend at the same total percentage. The difference? Not statistically significant for most barrier repair scenarios. Budget formulations like CeraVe Facial Moisturizing Lotion and Ceramedics use pseudoceramides, which are synthetic analogs that cost approximately 12 cents per gram versus $2.40 per gram for natural ceramides, yet deliver comparable barrier function metrics. The Korean manufacturer Cosfarm produces high-purity pseudoceramides that penetrate the bilayer structure effectively. Many K-beauty brands source from the same facilities supplying luxury European lines. Clinical application, ceramides work best when your barrier is structurally compromised, over-exfoliated skin, eczema flares, or post-procedure recovery. They don't require cellular uptake or metabolic conversion. They literally slot into the existing lipid architecture like replacement bricks in a wall. For immediate barrier repair, ceramide complexes outperform niacinamide consistently in TEWL studies. The formulation friction? Ceramides are notoriously difficult to stabilize in emulsions. Cheaper products often use insufficient emulsifier systems, leading to that characteristic waxy residue or uneven distribution. You'll feel this as pilling under sunscreen or a surface film that never quite absorbs. Quality ceramide serums require lecithin or specialized delivery systems, which is why effective options start around $15 for 1 ounce, not $8. Moving on to niacinamide as a barrier function regulator. Niacinamide, which is vitamin B3, functions as a precursor to NAD+ and NADP+, coenzymes essential for over 400 enzymatic reactions, including those governing ceramide synthesis, protein production, and inflammatory response. Unlike ceramides, which provide raw materials, niacinamide tells your keratinocytes to manufacture their own barrier components. The concentration curve matters significantly. Studies show barrier improvement plateaus between 5 and 10% niacinamide, with minimal additional benefit above that threshold. Below 3%, you're getting anti-inflammatory effects without substantial barrier repair. The National Center for Biotechnology Information published data in 2023 demonstrating that 5% niacinamide increased ceramide production by 34% and free fatty acid synthesis by 67% after 28 days of twice-daily application. From a cost efficiency perspective, niacinamide is extraordinarily accessible. Raw material cost sits around 3 cents per gram, and it remains stable across a wide pH range, 5.0 to 7.0, without requiring expensive stabilizers. Check the link below to see the current price for the ordinary niacinamide 10% plus zinc 1%, which costs around $1.60 per ounce. Good Molecule's 10% version runs around $2 per ounce. Both are manufactured in facilities that produce for prestige brands. You're paying for formulation simplicity and marketing subtraction, not inferior chemistry. The molecular mechanism creates a lag period for visible results. While ceramides reduce TEWL within 48 hours, niacinamide requires approximately 7 to 14 days to upregulate synthesis pathways and produce measurable lipid increases. This isn't a flaw, it's biological reality. You're waiting for genetic transcription, protein assembly, and lipid transport, processes that don't accelerate regardless of how much you spend. Clinical application. Niacinamide excels for chronic barrier dysfunction, particularly when inflammation drives the damage cycle. Seborrheic skin, rosacea-prone complexions, and acne-related barrier compromise respond exceptionally well because niacinamide simultaneously addresses inflammatory mediators while rebuilding lipid architecture. It's also the superior choice for combination skin types that find ceramide complexes too occlusive. The practical limitation? High concentration niacinamide, above 10%, can trigger flushing in approximately 15 to 20% of users, particularly those with reactive vasculature or existing rosacea. This isn't true irritation, it's a transient histamine response, but it creates discomfort that derails compliance. Some budget formulas also include zinc salts, like zinc PCA, which, while beneficial for oil regulation, can feel slightly drying if you're already dealing with barrier damage. Let's get into formulation chemistry and what actually reaches your barrier. Ceramide penetration depends entirely on vehicle formulation and particle size. Free ceramides in aqueous solutions don't penetrate effectively. They need lipophilic carriers or liposomal encapsulation. This is where budget products often fail. They list ceramides prominently, but suspend them in water-heavy gels where they sit on the surface providing minimal actual barrier reinforcement. Effective ceramide delivery requires lipid content minimum of 15%, that's a combination of emollients and occlusives, particle size below 200 nanometers for bilayer incorporation, presence of penetration enhancers like sodium PCA, urea, or glycerin, and physiological pH between 5.0 and 5.5 to maintain lipid organization. The CeraVe formulation uses multivesicular emulsion, or MVE, technology, which releases ceramides gradually over time. It's not marketing nonsense. The patent demonstrates microscopic lipid spheres that rupture sequentially. You're getting sustained delivery without the around $80 price tag of La Mer or SK2, which use functionally similar, though differently marketed, encapsulation systems. Niacinamide, conversely, is a small, water-soluble molecule with a molecular weight of 122 daltons that penetrates the stratum corneum readily without requiring specialized delivery. This is why budget niacinamide serums perform comparably to luxury alternatives. The molecule doesn't need help getting where it's going. A simple propylene diol or glycerin base suffices. Where you do see performance variance is in buffering and pH optimization. Niacinamide can hydrolyze to niacin at pH extremes, causing the infamous flushing response. Quality formulations maintain pH between 5.5 and 6.5 and include stabilizers like allantoin or panthenol. The Inky List, Naturium, and Good Molecules all achieve this at under $12 per ounce. You don't need to spend more unless you're layering additional actives like peptides or growth factors. Here's a price per active metric that's revealing. An 1-ounce serum with 5% niacinamide contains approximately 1,400 milligrams of active ingredient. At around $6 per ounce, that's around 4/1,000ths of a cent per milligram. A 1-ounce ceramide complex with 3% total ceramides contains roughly 840 milligrams. At around $15 per ounce, that's around 1.8 cents per milligram, more than 4 times the cost per active. This doesn't indicate inferior value. It reflects the actual production cost differential between water-soluble vitamins and complex lipid blends. Now, synergy and layering logistics. The ceramide versus niacinamide for skin barrier question becomes moot when you understand they operate through complementary, not competing mechanisms. Layering both creates a biochemical cascade. Niacinamide signals keratinocytes to produce ceramides endogenously, while topical ceramides immediately fill structural gaps. Optimal layering sequence: apply niacinamide serum first on damp skin, wait 60 to 90 seconds for absorption, then apply ceramide complex moisturizer. That's water-based penetrating first, then lipid-based sealing and reinforcing. This respects molecular weight and polarity. Water-based actives before oil-based occlusives is basic formulation science, but it matters significantly for barrier repair timelines. If you reverse the order, the lipid film from ceramide products reduces niacinamide penetration by approximately 40% per 2024 data from the International Journal of Cosmetic Science. Here's a budget-conscious routine example generating clinical-grade results. Good Molecules Niacinamide Serum, which is 10% niacinamide at around $6 per ounce, plus Ceramadex Restoring Body Lotion, which is 3% ceramide complex with cholesterol and fatty acids, face safe despite labeling, around $5 per ounce when calculated. Total cost per month? Approximately $4 to $5 with twice daily application. Compare this to luxury equivalents. SkinCeuticals Metacell Renewal B3, which is 5% niacinamide at around $110 per 1.7 ounces, that's around $64 per ounce, plus Elizabeth Arden Ceramide capsules, Ceramide concentrate at around $68 per 0.95 ounces, that's around $72 per ounce. Total cost per month? Approximately $45 to $50. The performance differential? In head-to-head TEWL measurements, minimal to none. You're funding packaging, retail markup, and brand positioning, not superior barrier outcomes. Let's talk about clinical response timelines and realistic expectations. For acute barrier damage, which is 72 hours to 2 weeks, ceramides dominate in acute scenarios. Chemical burns from aggressive exfoliation, environmental damage from cold or wind exposure, post-laser or post-peel recovery. The 2023 Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology published data showing ceramide-dominant formulations reduced TEWL by an average of 28% within 48 hours, compared to 11% for niacinamide at the same time point. Mechanism? You're providing immediate structural reinforcement. The damaged barrier has gaps in the lipid matrix. Ceramides fill those gaps without requiring cellular metabolism or synthesis pathways. It's mechanical, not biochemical. Clinical markers of acute response include reduced stinging or burning within 24 hours, visible reduction in flaking within 48 to 72 hours, TEWL normalization, which is measurable with home devices, within 5 to 7 days, and return of skin suppleness and reduced tightness. Niacinamide takes longer in acute settings because upregulating ceramide synthesis requires approximately 5 to 7 days for genetic transcription and protein assembly. By day 7 to 10, niacinamide-treated skin often catches up to ceramide-treated skin in TEWL measurements, but if you need immediate relief, ceramides provide faster symptomatic improvement. The formulation caveat. Many ceramide creams contain only 0.5 to 1% ceramides, without cholesterol or free fatty acids. These provide inadequate structural support. Look for formulations explicitly listing ceramide NP or ceramide 3 at 1% or higher, plus cholesterol and at least one fatty acid, often stearic or palmitic acid. Check the link below to see the current price for products meeting this standard, which include Stratia Liquid Gold at around $24 per 2 ounces, Dr. Jart Plus Ceramidin line, though overpriced at around $38 per 1.69 ounces, and the Budget Stellar CeraVe PM Facial Moisturizing Lotion at around $8 per 3 ounces when on sale. For chronic barrier dysfunction, which is 2 to 8 weeks, niacinamide pulls ahead in chronic scenarios: seborrheic dermatitis, chronic eczema, persistent sensitivity from long-term retinoid use, or ongoing environmental stress. The 2025 Dermatologic Therapy meta-analysis demonstrated that 8 weeks of 5% niacinamide application increased stratum corneum ceramide content by 32% and improved barrier recovery rate by 42% compared to baseline. This represents sustainable barrier improvement, not just temporary lipid supplementation. You're addressing the root synthesis dysfunction, not merely compensating for it. Clinical markers of chronic response include gradual reduction in inflammatory episodes, that's fewer flares, improved tolerance to previously irritating products, decreased baseline TEWL, so skin holds hydration better, and enhanced resilience to environmental stressors. The patient compliance factor matters here. Ceramide products require consistent twice-daily application to maintain supplementation. Miss a few days and you're back to square one. Your skin hasn't learned to produce more ceramides, you've just been providing them externally. Niacinamide creates lasting changes in cellular behavior. After 8 to 12 weeks of consistent use, many users can reduce application frequency to once daily or every other day while maintaining improved barrier function. Here's a combination approach for chronic dysfunction. Week 1 to 2, heavy ceramide focus morning and night to stabilize acute symptoms. Week 3 to 8, transition to niacinamide serum in the morning plus ceramide moisturizer at night. Week 9 and beyond, maintain niacinamide daily, use ceramide products as needed for environmental stress. Now, let's get into ingredient interactions and formulation conflicts. What enhances each ingredient? Ceramide boosters include cholesterol at 0.5 to 2%, which is essential for proper lamellar bilayer formation. Ceramides without cholesterol show reduced barrier improvement by approximately 35% in comparative studies. Fatty acids like palmitic and stearic complete the physiological lipid ratio. Look for formulations listing these in the first 10 ingredients. Ironically, niacinamide enhances ceramide efficacy by stimulating natural moisturizing factor, or NMF, production, improving water binding capacity within the repaired barrier structure. And hyaluronic acid provides a hydration platform for lipid organization. Multi-molecular weight HA, combining low molecular weight around 50 kilodaltons with high molecular weight around 1 to 2 megadaltons, works best. Niacinamide boosters include zinc PCA at 0.5 to 1%, which enhances anti-inflammatory effects and oil regulation, particularly valuable for acne-prone skin with barrier damage. Panthenol at 1 to 5% provides synergistic hydration and barrier support. It converts to pantothenic acid, supporting CoA synthesis, which is part of the ceramide production pathway. NAG, that's N-acetylglucosamine, at 2% works synergistically with niacinamide for barrier repair and hyperpigmentation. The Ordinary's formula combines both. And peptides like matricil 3000 or copper peptides complement niacinimade's barrier support with collagen synthesis stimulation. Check the link below to see the current price for budget serums successfully combining these synergists, like Naturium Multipeptide plus HA Serum, which has niacinamide plus peptides plus HA at around $15 per ounce, and Geek and Gorgeous A-Pad Serum, which is 5% niacinamide plus 2% NAG, imported but available domestically, approximately around $16 per ounce. What conflicts or reduces efficacy? With ceramides, avoid strong surfactants in cleansers immediately before application. Sodium lauryl sulfate, or SLS, disrupts lipid organization for 2 to 3 hours post-cleansing. Use gentler surfactants like cocoa glucoside or diesel glucoside, or wait 30+ minutes after cleansing before ceramide application. Also, avoid high-concentration AHAs or BHAs simultaneously. Acids disrupt the pH and lipid structure ceramides are trying to reinforce. Separate by 12+ hours or skip acids entirely during acute barrier repair phases. With niacinamide, avoid pure L-ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, in the same formula. At low pH, below 3.5, niacinamide can convert to niacin, causing flushing. However, this is formulation dependent. Many modern formulas buffer adequately to prevent this. The greater concern is pH conflict. LAA requires pH 2.5 to 3.5 for stability, while niacinamide performs best at 5.5 to 6.5. Layer separately. Vitamin C in morning, niacinamide at night. Also, avoid high-concentration retinoids simultaneously, above 0.1%. Not a chemical conflict, but both can stress compromised barriers. If using tretinoin or adalapine, introduce niacinamide first for 2 to 4 weeks to reinforce barrier function before adding retinoids. The ceramide versus niacinamide for skin barrier layering question has a straightforward answer. They layer beautifully together when you respect molecular polarity, that's water before oil, and pH considerations. Acids separate from niacinamide by 12 plus hours. So, who should choose ceramides first? You're a ceramide priority candidate if you experience acute barrier damage requiring rapid TEWL reduction, like post-peel, over-exfoliation, or environmental assault. If you have eczema or atopic dermatitis with visible flaking and inflammatory lesions. If you experience immediate stinging or burning upon product application, indicating severe lipid depletion. Or if you have mature skin, 45 and up, where endogenous ceramide production has declined approximately 40 to 60% from youth levels. Skin type suitability. Ceramide complexes work universally, but shine brightest on dry, dehydrated, or compromised skin types. If you're oily or acne-prone, choose lightweight ceramide serums rather than heavy creams to avoid pore congestion. The Ceramides line offers non-comedogenic options around $12 per ounce. Texture considerations. Expect slightly richer textures. Even lightweight ceramide formulations have more slip and emollient feel than water-based serums. This isn't necessarily negative. Many users find the cushioning texture soothing on irritated skin. But if you prefer barely there serums, the sensory experience might feel initially foreign. Price optimization. Don't overspend on multi-ceramide blends unless you have specific dermatological conditions, like severe eczema, warranting it. Single ceramide formulations, ceramide NP, with cholesterol and fatty acids, deliver 85 to 90% of the barrier benefit at 40 to 60% of the cost compared to 5-plus ceramide complexes marketed by luxury brands. Who should choose niacinamide first? You're a niacinamide priority candidate if you have chronic barrier dysfunction from ongoing inflammatory conditions like rosacea or seborrheic dermatitis, if you have oily or combination skin requiring barrier repair without occlusive heaviness, if you have concurrent hyperpigmentation concerns, niacinamide inhibits melanosome transfer at 4% plus concentrations, or if you have budget constraints, because niacinamide delivers maximum barrier benefit per dollar spent. Skin type suitability. Niacinamide suits all skin types, but particularly benefits oily, acne-prone, or reactive complexions. The anti-inflammatory and sebum-regulating properties address multiple concerns simultaneously. It's the rare active that improves barrier function without risking congestion. Texture considerations. Niacinamide serums range from water-thin to light gel consistency. Most absorb completely within 60 seconds, leaving no residue or film. This makes them ideal for layering under other products or for users who dislike the feeling of product on skin. Concentration guidance. Start with 5% if you're barrier compromised and new to niacinamide. The 10% formulations from The Ordinary and Good Molecules are cost-effective but can overwhelm sensitized skin initially. After 2 to 4 weeks at 5%, most users tolerate 10% without issue. Above 10% provides minimal additional benefit and increases flushing risk. One formulation note. Some budget niacinamide serums feel slightly sticky during the first 30 to 60 seconds post-application. This is typically from humectants like glycerin or propanediol and dissipates with absorption, but it bothers texture-sensitive users. The Naturium and Versed formulations absorb more cleanly than the ordinaries, if that tactile experience matters to you. Let me answer some frequently asked questions. Can I use ceramides and niacinamide together in the same routine? Yes, ceramides and niacinamide work synergistically when layered correctly. Apply niacinamide serum first on damp skin, then wait 60 to 90 seconds, then follow with ceramide-containing moisturizer. This sequence maximizes penetration of the water-soluble niacinamide while allowing the lipid-based ceramides to seal the barrier. Clinical studies showed this combination reduces TEWL more effectively than either ingredient alone, with niacinamide stimulating endogenous ceramide production, while topical ceramides provide immediate structural support. Many dermatologists consider this the gold standard approach for comprehensive barrier repair, particularly for chronic or severe barrier dysfunction. How long does it take to see results from ceramides versus niacinamide for barrier repair? Ceramides typically reduce transepidermal water loss and improve barrier symptoms within 48 to 72 hours because they provide direct lipid replacement without requiring metabolic conversion. Niacinamide requires 7 to 14 days to show measurable barrier improvement, since it must upregulate genetic transcription and stimulate ceramide synthesis pathways. By week 4 to 8, niacinamide often produces superior long-term barrier improvement because it addresses the root synthesis dysfunction rather than merely supplementing missing lipids. For acute damage requiring immediate relief, ceramides work faster. For chronic barrier dysfunction requiring sustainable improvement, niacinamide creates more lasting cellular changes that persist even after reducing application frequency. Eczema-prone skin benefits most from combining both ingredients, though ceramides provide faster symptomatic relief during acute flares. Research shows eczema involves both depleted lipid content, where ceramides help directly, and inflammatory dysregulation, where niacinamide excels. A 2024 meta-analysis found that formulations containing 2% plus ceramides with cholesterol reduced eczema severity scores by 41% at 2 weeks, while 5% niacinamide reduced flare frequency by 38% at 8 weeks. The optimal approach uses ceramide-dominant products during active flares for immediate barrier reinforcement, then maintains with niacinamide long-term to prevent recurrence by addressing underlying inflammatory triggers and supporting sustained ceramide synthesis. Here's the bottom line. The ceramide versus niacinamide for skin barrier debate resolves into a timeline question, not a superiority contest. Ceramides deliver emergency structural repair within 48 to 72 hours by physically filling gaps in your lipid matrix, critical for acute damage, eczema flares, or post-procedure recovery. Niacinamide generates sustainable barrier improvement over 4 to 8 weeks by upregulating your skin's own ceramide synthesis and inflammatory regulation, superior for chronic dysfunction, reactive skin types, or long-term resilience. From a budget performance perspective, both ingredients punch well above their price point. Quality niacinamide serums cost around $4 to $9 per ounce and perform identically to luxury alternatives because the molecule needs no specialized delivery. Effective ceramide complexes run around $8 to $15 per ounce when formulated correctly with cholesterol and fatty acids. You're paying for formulation complexity, not brand mythology. The highest performing approach combines both niacinamide serum layered under ceramide moisturizer, creating complementary mechanisms that address barrier damage from multiple angles. This protocol costs $10 to $20 monthly using budget formulations while delivering clinical outcomes matching protocols 4 to 5 times the price. That wraps up this episode of Luxury Beauty on a Budget podcast. Thanks for spending this time with me today. Just a reminder, we release new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so you'll never be waiting too long for the next one. If you found this episode useful, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and a quick review. I know it sounds like a small thing, but it genuinely makes a difference. It helps other people who are searching for honest, budget-friendly beauty information actually find the show. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe or follow so you get notified the second a new episode goes live. I'll talk to you soon.